Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Order. It's me, the Duncan Dad, out here today in the beautiful state of New Jersey. Just kidding. It's New Jersey. There's really nothing fantastic about New Jersey except for, well, I don't know, strawberries, tomatoes, Jersey Shore, if you're into that sort of thing. I like the beach. It's all right. Big news, obviously. Doing a quick little hit thing today because we were busy running around. A doctor's appointment for kids, flu shots, that kind of stuff for the season. Helping out with the family when I can to make things better for all parties involved. But yesterday, obviously, big election news. Pennsylvania went Fetterman's way, went Shapiro's way. Dr. Oz and Mastriano were kind of set out the pasture. You know, everybody's all hamped up for like this big red wave, at like commentary and that critique sort of ahead of any sort of election. You really have to take everything with a grain of salt. And not that people should be really disappointed by kind of like what went down or what happened, but like they found out in 2016 when, Trump surprised, all the pundits and all the polls and took Clinton, you know, to the wood shop. The Republican base really, really underperformed compared to the turnout for uh, the young independent, the young Democratic voter. And what we've seen a lot is that there's sort of been like a shift in the way that people are, one, turning out to vote, but two, the the ideology of Americans, although it's rooted in a more traditional background, they have really come to the forefront to where they are more uh, empathetic and more apt to lean towards a candidate who is, uh, like, in theory, more open and more liberal in their views. Like, when you get people up there completely shutting down, women's rights, there's a lot of modern individuals who may be conservative that look across the room and they see, their daughter and they see their mother or they see their sister, they see their aunt, and that might be the tipping point, for them to, vote the other way. Also, there was a lot of candidates that were ran out there, and like you can make a splash one or two times, but then behind it you really have to have more than just your name or pointing fingers at the other person. Quality of candidate, quality of individual, is really it's paramount, and it goes both ways. I mean, some of the ideas that you see on the two extremes are just, you hold your breath and you're like, man, I really hope it doesn't go that way. But like I said, people are more apt to not be uh, open to those sort of opinions. But when you hold them to it, you find very few individuals who are so staunch in their convictions that they aren't able to see something from the other side. And like I always talk about this program, anytime you have an extreme, whether it's life, relationship, career, your own personal convictions, vices, and stuff like that, you run the risk of it becoming uh, the, the the defining and driving factor in so much of everything that you do, and it leads to where you're sitting there like this with your blinders up and you're unable to acknowledge the other side or the other party. And not that you have to agree with everything and get along with everything, but when you isolate yourself so much and put yourself, in a box, put them in a box. What's in a box? When you're in that box, you have no room for error, right? Right, right. Yeah, exactly. Brian's saying that you have to keep saying bad candidates, Trump candidates, but it's crickets about Roe. It would have been a wave with Kemp and Youngkin and folks. Right, exactly. I mean, it's you finding a candidate who can understand both sides of the argument, but at the same time stay focused on the bigger picture. I mean, I was talking to someone last night about, women's rights, and obviously, I mean, I've got daughters, so it's paramount that they have access to certain things, no matter which way you slice and dice it. That's all your religious beliefs, all your personal convictions to the side. You know, you can't like right, funny, right? Can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but I guess you can. Uh, past, we've moved past the cut and dryness in this country. Like it's 2022, right? So you can have someone who is for certain aspects when it falls underneath women's rights with limits, same way that you have someone who is wanted to do like a criminal justice reform, but you can't let everybody out of jail. You can't let you can't just give everybody a free pass, right? I mean, just like you can have all of the all the weapons, all the munitions, all the firearms that you want. Do you need an arsenal? Do you need and that's not saying that you don't have the right to it. Like that's how people get confused with that stuff. Like you got a right to go and eat ice cream every day. You got a right to go and eat. Right. No, yeah, exactly. And that's what it is. And that's kind of the point about DeSantis. I know he rubs people the wrong way sometimes. Other people that fall down and worship at the altar of DeSantis. But as a as a strong moderate conservative, moderate Republican leader, he went about things from the perspective of doing what was in the best interest of the people, and you saw that there was such an overwhelming turnout in Florida to support that individual because people like leaders who step up and lead, right? I mean, like we've seen this in the past with both sides and both parties. When you come to the forefront and you're leading from the best interest of all of your constituents, not just the ones who happen to be in your party, you get a lot of residual support. Like everyone will benefit from the way that this individual, runs their state, runs their city, runs their town. Um, you look back at Philadelphia, I mean, and Pennsylvania. Everybody loved Ed Rendell. I mean, for the most part, everybody loved Ed Rendell. I mean, Nutter was a little crazy, but for the most part, a lot of people, kind of got the vibe with him. Um, Obviously, there's been like other governors throughout the state that are just like, no, they were my way highway specific group based or specific party based. And anytime that we've ever had any sort of real movement and change in this country, it's because you've had people from both sides sit down and be like, yo, we played enough games, we threw enough shade. Now we really need to reconsider this stuff and go forward. We talked about on last program about how there's so many programs that are set up in order to help specific areas in this country, specific people in this country, specific um, socioeconomic suppressed areas, etc. You know, it's time to have like a little bit of checks and balance there. Because when you let things sort of just take care of themselves, right? Exactly, and that's how that's why I looked at it. I mean, the Brian's talking about the pendulum swinging back and forth, and like we always talk about this program that you know, anytime you go far one way, you're always going to come back to the other side. Sometimes it comes back faster, sometimes it comes back slower. The pendulum's always moving. Uh, there's always a counterbalance. There's always something that puts things, you know, back into place. It's that great adage of like, all is right in the world again, and all is right in the world again is because everybody's taking a collective breath and reevaluating where you're at, where you stand, and really like what's in the best interest of everybody. And what's in the best interest of everybody is like sometimes you got to have a little bit of this, got to have a little bit of that in order to go forward. we spent a lot these last couple years screaming and yelling about these extremes. I think it was clear for the most part last night that you have a majority of individuals who in this country lean more towards the open ideas of how things could be. It doesn't mean they want to, run off the cliff, but they're a little more apt to give themselves the leeway. So that being said, when you have an individual and you want to portray strong leadership, you want to portray something running efficiently, you can't have someone or someones who are so fixated on a particular subject area or particular issue that it's the only thing that defines them. Because if you only have one thing that defines you, and not that you can't have a stance, but the appeal to the voter is, well, I'll trade a little bit of uh, Second Amendment for the rights of my daughter, or I'll trade a little bit of social justice reform, as long as I get to keep XYZ in the way of my firearms and my weapons. And that's not the saying one side is right, one side is wrong. It's just that we are always doing this dance within this community, within the society, within the world of trying to find this happy medium. And we've evolved or devolved, or we have come to where we're at in 2022, that the majority of individuals now, whether people want to really like admit it or not, they're grounded in this. I think I can have stuff from both sides and be okay, and everyone can get along. But if you hold me to it, I'm going to take the side over here that is a little more flexible, because there might be an opportunity where something comes up for me that I would like a little more flexibility. What's the catch? The catch 22 is that too much flexibility and no backbone, too much flexibility and and nothing concrete in order to move forward on, you leave yourself open to a mishmash of ideas to where you then start to entertain every single little idea. And there's nothing wrong with there's nothing wrong with entertaining every idea and acknowledging everyone's perspective or acknowledging everyone's position. But you really have to have the wherewithal and the collective individuals who are running the country and the legislation, as much as you want to stay committed to your, you know, I'm not identity politics, but to your party politics, you really have to take a deep breath and project out, like, is this something that is going to be beneficial for the entire group, moving forward, not just in 2 years, not just in 4 years, not just in 6 years, but you're laying the groundwork now for the future. And we always talk about, oh, it is best election, this is this, that's that. But it is, like, every election is the most important election. You have an opportunity to, like Ryan was saying, to either help kick the pendulum back one way, maybe bring it back the other way. But every time, like I said, every time that pendulum swings, it's grabbing something and it's bringing it back, and it's bringing it back, and it's bringing it back. Um, there needs to be a clear understanding of what the makeup of a Democratic voter is, what the makeup of a Republican voter is. There's a lot of Republicans that I know that voted more towards their liberal candidate because of the issues that we previously mentioned: the social justice, the crime reform, the education, the women's rights, I mean, people vote with their feelings as much as they don't want to say they do that. They do vote for their feelings. They do vote with their feelings. Yeah, facts don't care about your feelings, but you can change a lot of these policies. You can adjust a lot of these policies, and you have to be willing to sit down and actually have the conversation. That's what's true for the other side as well. The other side has to be willing to acknowledge some of these convictions, some of these principles, some of these ideas that are being presented from the other side. And it's always good to find a happy medium. Sometimes you can't find a happy medium. Sometimes the basic functionality of an institution, of a business, of a relationship, there is no room for error, right? There's no room for wavering, right? Like you're in something committed, you gotta stay committed to it. Like there, yeah, like anytime you throw something else into the mix, and I need to go to work, right? And you've got your job that you're doing. You can't augment the task or augment the way that you're performing a specific task to suit your needs. You may be able to introduce some improvements. You may be able to introduce some ways to streamline things, but the basic task itself has to be and remain on point. Right, exactly. And a lot of those things that and Brian's making a great point about Mastriano and Shapiro. Um, Mastriano came out, and of course, it's the sound bites, and you put it all in context. It's like, oh, no exceptions for incest, no exceptions for rape, no exceptions for this abortion, blah blah blah. And then he's talking about changing legalities of gay marriage and blah blah blah. Listen, I've known gay couples that have been way more committed, way more on the ball, way more attentive as parents than many of heterosexual couples. It's 2022. Like, if I'm committed and I'm with someone and I have a family and I have a house and we are in it with each other, then like that person should be afforded the same rights as another married person. The tax benefits, the insurance benefits. Why? Because what makes it different? Because that's my wife. But now you don't want to talk about genders and sexes. And like it's this entire slippery slope of picking and choosing when certain things apply. And at the end of the day, and the bottom line is that it always applies. It's always present. It can't be cut up and sliced and diced and turned out this way based on all the data, based on all of the factors that you have going on. You need to think, you need to operate, you need to understand your country, your legislation, your judicial system in the terms of 2022, not 1950, 1970, even 1980 and 1990. There's been so much social change, social acceptance, social normalcy of things that were very taboo and very passe. And yeah, it happened really quickly. It challenges a lot of people. But when you look at the raw statistical data, there was a humongous turnout, like 186% of the younger voters, that 18 to 25, 18 to 26 group of the young liberal registered Democrat voters who were speaking up and saying, look, we get where everybody's at with this, but we're not willing to yield all this progress that we've made. How do you quantify progress? You're going to have to wait generations to quantify progress. You're going to have to wait decades to see how policy has affected things. There's very few policy changes that you can make that have an instantaneous impact. And they talk about, oh, what about Roe? What about this? You still have access to a lot of these things. A lot of it then was generated through state level as opposed to the federal level. People get hung up on a lot of the idiosyncrasies, but you saw a shift in the psyche, in the conscience of American people who were just like, you know, it wasn't the issue that people expected it to be. And I think that's because, excuse me a second, it isn't that issue because people have moved beyond they've moved beyond that argument. Not that it's not important, it's extremely important. Should it be taken away? No, it should never be taken away. It's a woman's health, it's woman's rights. I mean, I don't want somebody coming in here and saying, "Hey, you can't go see, your oncologist, or you can't go see, your male doctor or something like that, or you can't have this kind of treatment, or you can't do this." I mean, it's always what's below the surface with all these programs, with all of these court cases where we have a lot of the underlying uh, issues, right? It's like when you put bills through Congress, put bills through the Senate, Inflation Reduction Act, that's fine. But when you piggyback umpteen billions dollars on it to go to like Ukraine, or umpteen hundred millions of dollars for like the wildlife preserve in the middle of like, Timbuktu or something like that, that's where people are like, yo, hold on a second. And that's Americans, blue, red, in between. Everybody's realizing that you're the one paying for this stuff now. Like you're really the ones paying for it. In the past, like, oh yeah, my taxes pay for this, oh the government, blah. But all of these bits of legislation, all these bits of policy, they're coming into your house now. Legit coming in, like they're really affecting, your bottom line. And they're affecting your bottom line because you see the spikes in the taxes, you see the spikes in the inflation costs, you see the spikes in uh, the interest rates. Makes a difference for people. And, one of the best things in the world, and I always harp on this, and I really wish people would get it. Taxes and money, they give two craps what color you are, how you vote, what religion you practice. Once you get that ideology in your head that the people on the other side are just worried about the bottom line, because they're worried about the bottom line. Don't fool yourself. They're worried about the bottom line. There's so much that revolves around how they will continue to maintain their place. It's a redefining moment. It always has been. It always will be. And it just shows that society is evolving, right? Yeah, exactly. I mean, Brian's bringing this up. He says that, a lot of this stuff is let a sleeping dog lie, and it's a loser's game to even mess with it. And I agree. And there's a lot of times where it's not that you can't affect change, and it's not that your vote doesn't matter because it does. It's not that your voice doesn't matter because it does. But you see the instances in our history where you've had an individual or a group of individuals that have actually tried to change things from the inside out. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I have slept at a Motel 6 and a Holiday Inn. Um, like there's a reason why certain presidents get rubbed out, right? There's certain reasons why certain presidents and certain groups. Yeah, Tom Bodette, he left the light on for me. I'll leave the light on for you. Um, There are, man. There's you, don't be afraid to think outside your box, right? I mean, people don't hate Trump because he's a shrewd businessman. People don't hate Trump because he's got a lot of mean tweets. People don't hate Trump because he's a narcissist. People don't hate Trump because he can be real cut and dry and a hole sometimes. People don't like Trump because he was willing to call everybody out and be like, "Yo, what are you doing? You're supposed to be working for these people, and you're doing this." And whatever way you want to slice it or dice it, he's like, "Look, you don't go down this road with your energy stuff. This is what's going to happen. You're going to deplete your reserve. You're going to have gas prices up to $6, $7, and you're going to find yourself back in bed with the same people that you worked so hard to break away from and be independent from." It's exactly what's going on. Your costs are going to go because he understood from the business side of it that everything in Washington, everything in the country, everything in your life is connected. Everything is connected. We joke, we play Philadelphia. Shout out to the Bacon brothers. 6 degrees of separation with Kevin Bacon. It is, man, especially in politics, especially in the real world. If you don't think that there's uh, an upper echelon of individuals that push things certain ways, you're fooling yourself. You're fooling yourself. You're absolutely fooling yourself. Why would all of a sudden Cabbage Patch Kid or Pet Rock or a Tickle Me Elmo be the most popular gift in the world? Little stupid instances like that. But think about that. It's pushing business, pushing market, push. Listen, man, it's there, and people are not blind to that stuff anymore. But you have a lot of people who are still sitting in these positions of authority, and guess what? They don't want you to know that they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. They're greasing palms to do this. They're back ending and backloading deals and bills. That's been going on forever. I mean, it's been going on forever. Now, because it's 2022, everyone has the ability to connect all these dots. You have the ability to find all this information and put things together. And this isn't conspiracy. This is just, this is how it works and goes round. Sometimes it works for the good. Sometimes it works for a few. Sometimes it just kind of sits there and does its thing. Nothing too spectacular, nothing too horrible. But the same way that we evolved in 2022 to understand the ramifications of these deals, everyone now is beginning to feel some of this, I won't call it shadiness, this business practice, right? Everyone's feeling this now. Everyone's starting to feel the the effects. Yep, exactly. Hey, everybody, hold on for 1 second.